June 10th, 2016. Story ideas. Photographing for NASA. Explaining Dad dying. Inheriting camera gear. He said he was number 3 at O. His boss was the guy that wrote the code, and his boss was LE. He wrote one of their releases in his off time. He did a lot of cool stuff, my dad. He was the kind of guy most people would look up to. He was also an incredibly darkly dangerous human being. Going to Maker's Fair. Show photo of guy playing saxophone. Being asked to write an article for Make magazine, failing to get into the publication, had no idea what I was doing. Nedio's brother photographing love, being asked to come photograph a rocket launch, driving out there, sleeping in the car, going on base, being split up from Nedio's. Ours had meeting an astronaut, is discussing how they had the shuttle fly over their location when it came back for the last time, getting to know the folks there, guy discussing his new biking schedule, how the first 2 weeks sucks and it feels great, having the astronaut play with my camera. I don't like it, he said, missing the shot because it launched early and there was weather just over our location, not having a place to publish a piece on the people, getting paid to photograph something truly amazing, being told I would get a patch for coming. It's still sitting in Love's library in a box somewhere. I'm hoping to put it on my wall one day with the passes to the base we kept. Penning for royalty. Family friend happened to be a princess. As funny as it sounds, Anne does have real royalty. The last time I heard from her, she was still a high-powered person in O. She's a lovely person. She took in her 2 nephews to raise as her own. She and her sister made us dinner once. I complained about there being liver in the food since I didn't like offal. She said I wouldn't taste it. She was right. Fried plantains are amazing. Asked me to do map work and art for her book about her father, the king. Commissioned me to do a piece of the king's gold mask at his 80th birthday present. I suck at making maps. Did the best I could. They liked the piece and asked me to do another for the cover of the book, but I lost the plot. Still feel terrible about it too. They asked me not to paint it so photorealistically. I was a photorealistic airbrush artist at the time. The podcast show's icon is a painting I did of Carl Sagan's chin. It was my first attempt at airbrushing. It's actually my first color piece I'd ever done with airbrush. I wish I'd handled that better. I hope she's doing well. First time making screen prints. First time making shirts. Going to G-Will to buy the frames, going to the bins to find more frames, finding an IBM manual on vacuum systems randomly, how fascinating it was. Nedio getting her first shirt rack there for $8, making the frames, Nedio emulsifying them in the dark, taping the window shut so no light would get in, printing out my designs on Valium on the laser printer, how cool it was. They looked sweet. Taping the designs down, putting them in the luggage case from my market days, taking them outside. We had 3... 1 suitable for shirts and 2 suitable as bag overlays. 1 at a time, first lasting for 1 minute 30 seconds, if failing. Beaker washed out pretty quickly. Trying again with the second one. Bowie, 3 minutes, failing again. Only his hair broke that time. Realizing that the frames were casting shadows and caused the breakage and needed to be reversed and done on the back instead. Reprint the last design mirrored. 5-minute exposure. Life is short. Don't be lazy. Lost a little edging for the S's, so it wasn't usable, but we were so close, being bummed out because we really needed this to work. Nedio had ordered $100 of blank shirts for us to work on that we were hoping to get into the market when she started selling her soaps. We'd been in the team selling her amazing soaps and my artwork on t-shirts, waiting a few weeks to save up for more frames to try again. Learning to use the light kit I inherited from Dad as an exposure box, getting the shirts made, heat shrinking them, bringing them to market. Being committed, paranoid delusions and psychosis, failing at business, bullying, being suicidal, losing weight, learning to animate, asterisks and obelisks, starting over, synesthesia, the album's popularity, emotional layering, being disabled. I was a severe primary, weighing 2.2 pounds when I was born at 26 weeks, that's 3.5 months early. I almost needed open heart surgery my second day because a valve wasn't opening. I was in an incubator for 3 months. One of the nervous permanently disfigured my face by putting both tubes I needed to live, one for food and the other to breathe in through one nostril. There's a story of my grandfather saving my life because he could hear me crying, which meant I wasn't being assisted in breathing as was needed. The nurse argued with him that it wasn't possible. He said, "The damn baby is wailing. Can't you hear it?" I don't remember much about him. He was a POW survivor from the Italian African front of World War II. He saw horrendous things, including children being hanged. He was terrified of German shepherds. I always remember him sitting in the chair at our house with a bottle of scotch. He didn't talk much. I must have meant something to him though, since he and my grandmother kept a copy of my birth footprint, all 1 inch of it, on their wall. I was diagnosed at 9 weeks with cerebral palsy. I used to scream when somebody would move my limbs. I went through physical therapy between 2 to 4 years old, so I could walk at all. In primary school back in NZ, I had leg casts on for 2 weeks so I wouldn't toe walk everywhere. They include 2 inch thick pink neon sandals. Nobody wanted to sign them. Had to use crutches then. I still remember when they cut them off. A stone had gotten stuck just below my knee weeks prior, and they had to dig it out. I thought the saw they used to cut them off was awesome. We did a school run day where you got to race the other school kids around the perimeter of the school fields. There was a doctor there in a white coat. He told my parents I would never be able to run. I tried to, but it was just too painful. Imagine always having muscle spasms and cramps every time you moved, regardless of how you were feeling. They were open discussion about slicing my tendons to lengthen them. My parents made no effort to sugarcoat what it meant. Eventually they decided against it. They had to bring in a heated waterbed so I could sleep. I would spend most nights awake hurting. They used to feed me Marmite sandwiches to give me something to fight the pain off. The salt helps your muscles, Mum would say. I still use them when I can't sleep from muscle ache. They're a tasty placebo. I used to headbang for hours trying to make the pain stop. I've done it since I was a baby. The rocking motion calms me down and warms the muscles up. I used to chafe the skin on my forehead away before I could stop myself. It drove my family nuts. I just had to stop doing it with Nedio and I started sleeping in the same bed, but I still have the urge to do it when I can't sleep. There's nothing quite like it. I used to call it whining because of the sound I made while doing it. I was a weird kid. It made me feel better though, even if I didn't get to sleep that night. Fast forward a couple of decades, and other than a broken wrist from a high school argument, I was doing better. I had to take antispasmodics 3 times a day and muscle relaxers twice a day just so I could work an 8-hour shift at the retail store I was in. I was working my way up management and had moved to the top store in the company. It was just after Dad had died. Nedio and I had moved with my mom to make sure she didn't off herself. She wasn't feeding herself at that point and was basically nuts. She thought we had moved there to literally be her servants. It was this whole thing. 5-acre place, 40 minutes from anywhere in the middle of the forest. Mom in the main house, us renting the 1-room apartment up the hill from her on the same property. 3 days into the move, I was carrying a box of books down into my brother's room when I slipped on the carpeted edge of the stairs and bounced down the staircase on the same part of my spine over and over. I was messed up, but I didn't realize it at the time. I just went back to carrying box after box of books down the stairs. I was used to being sore. The staircase didn't have a guardrail at that point. There was no way to catch myself. It turned out I had done a number on my spine. I started to need to use a cane to get around and got progressively weaker and weaker as the week went on. I went to the doctor, this no-nonsense woman that I liked very much. She took one look at my back when I took my shirt off and said I'd twisted it. It explained why I had lost some feeling in my lower back, and I felt like I was standing straight and my feet were pointing to the right. I went and got a referral to a neurological specialist. They did some blood tests. It turns out I didn't have cerebral palsy. The enzymes that show in the blood weren't there. It was a muscle wasting condition known as muscular dystrophy. I freaked out and didn't go back to the doctor to finish my brain scans. Eventually the back pain got so bad that I had to leave my job because I couldn't handle it any longer. I was really trying to get into corporate before it got too bad, but just ran out of energy. I got really depressed. Badly. Reclusive. Terribly. Then I got sick of the pain. I thought that perhaps I had crimped a couple of discs in my back where the feeling had dulled to an oily warmness that never went away. I was desperate, so I tried something. We had inherited this very heavy metal futon as our living room couch from the old owners of the place. It just happened to be about as long as I was from end to end laid out. So one night at about 3 a.m., after not being able to handle it any longer, I laid down, wrapped my legs around one side of the armrest, and grappled the other side. Then I relaxed slightly and put all my strength into stretching my back. It didn't work. I was getting delirious from the pain. I thought to myself, it's not hard enough, and redoubled my efforts. There was an unbearable pressure emanating from the warmth and fogginess of my back. It was sickening. Then there was an ungodly schlock sound, and I blacked out. I woke up hours later in terrible pain and promptly passed out again. 2 months later, I started to walk under my own power again. I've not gone back to the cane yet. There's a sense of horror finding out that disability that you've had your whole life isn't actually there. It's worse finding out it's something else that's likely going to kill you at some point. I've never fooled myself into thinking I could have a long lifespan. Preemie babies with bad hearts don't last long as far as I can tell, but that was a real kick in the balls. Eventually my body is going to start eating itself until something fails. If I'm lucky when that happens, I'll be able to get to a hospital and have some machinery put in to keep it going. If not, it's game over, man. It's not something I worry about presently, though. Other than physical disabilities, I've been told I have learning and mental issues as well. When I was 20 and had my first real suicidal episode, my dad found me with my pocket knife in my arm. I still have a scar over the vein I cut over. I went to a set of therapists and psychologists, both very good at what they do. After some discussion, we figured I needed an ADHD/ADD test. At the same time, I asked for an IQ battery because I thought I may have been dense, because I could never figure out how to do well in school. I would get the material but could never finish anything. Everything was boring because nothing was difficult. Both returned surprising results. I was classified with 99% severity of ADH1 primary inattentive, the one that survived the new DSM-V listing, explaining I couldn't concentrate for more than a few seconds at a time of various things. It made sense. If it wasn't a book I picked myself, it wasn't something I could focus on. I was reading 1 to 3 books per day in high school during every class. Most teachers hated me, but it was the only thing I could make me feel safe. I found books make people leave you alone. Other than getting high scores consistently throughout, I also got a perfect score with one of the IQ battery sections, inherent mathematical ability. I didn't know you could get a perfect score on an IQ test before that. It minimally put me in the top 3% of the populace, and I used it to get into Mensa. Not that I'm bragging in any way. It was also the only proof that I had that I wasn't a complete moron, like my family kept telling me I was, and how much I felt at the time. It's not worth much, but it gave me some hope that when I was really in a dark place. I keep a copy of it so that I can look it over when I feel completely useless. I was also diagnosed with clinical depression. Years later, I moved to P.O. when I was 27. Just a few months ago, honestly, I had another breakdown, but this time it was psychotic. After weeks of erratic behavior, I lost my lot in our favorite bar, the only place that served sausage rolls like they do at home, and we had to leave. We haven't been able to go back because I came off as such a D-bag. I can't remember what happened. I blocked a lot of that time period out, but I do miss the M and SP. I wanted to apologize for my actions, but didn't know how. Oh hey, I'm sorry I was such an a-hole the last time I was in here. I was literally losing my mind. I ended up being committed by Nadio the week before Christmas. She had to make a very difficult call. The cops come with social workers to try and talk you out of what's going to happen if they can. Then they do their best to help you. Really, I needed what happened. They handcuff you in your living room and throw you in the back of a police cruiser and drag you into the hospital psych ward. You become someone else's property at that point. It's not fun, but I enjoyed it. It was like going to camp. You make art once a day, talk about your dark childhood, and the food is excellent. And other than the hours of people yelling, the other patients are pretty awesome. They even let you outside for 20 to 40 minutes per day to get some fresh air. Scrubs are extremely comfortable. I was out of it. I thought I was the character Peter in the middle of this whole thing being run by some powerful elite group. The markers in pop culture were telling me that I was being monitored from childhood and that my father had been monitored as well by Steve Wozniak of all people. I thought there were people staring at me through a television set, responding in yes or no blinks to questions I asked, and that people were going out in public just to interact with me but wouldn't tell me why. Oh, and they were probably the FBI or something else. I couldn't tell which. The paranoia was literally driving me insane until I told Nadia she needed to leave me so I could hang myself in the shed out back. The night before, I had pulled the drawstring from my hoodie around my neck and tried to choke myself into unconsciousness. I wanted to know what to expect when I did the real thing. I was in there for a good reason. I still have that sense of being watched and being part of something larger than myself, but there's nothing I can do about it. It just won't go away. Something got permanently changed. We call it the sickness. When I feel like that in public, I have to ask Nadia if so-and-so a person is watching me. There's oftentimes body language that goes along with it, and after a few depictions, you're on full tactical alert. You start picking the watchers out of the room, and it gets to the point you start seeing whole rooms of movement in one glance, because they tend to organize themselves into groups that are easy to identify as surveillance teams. The way the CIA or FBI breaks a group down into single parts of a moving unit. I know I'm insane, it just sucks I can't get around it anymore and have to question everything I do or see for legitimacy's sake. I got given a diagnosis of bipolar 1 with possible schizophrenic tendencies. I'm on daily antipsychotics and PTSD meds for night terrors. I'm making these animations to attempt sanity again, starting over, so is life. Helping others, it's not something you inherently know how to do, but it is something you do inherently. Addiction, drugs, sex, and rock and roll. My idea of the grand unified theory. Designing a stark generator. Designing an environmental suit to slow your aging. The cascade. Moving. Tie that into the bullying episode. June 13th, 2016. Not well today. Thoughts of suicide continuing from thoughts of being worthless yesterday. Wasting my life for no real reason that I can discern. Been anxious all morning. Too much coffee makes it worse. Went and got Nadio's green clay today. Rained hard while getting over there. Need to get new brake pads, tires, and windshield wipers. Still, I should continue with the animation. It's something to work on that's new. I'll have to research faces and cartoon emotion. S is not getting back to me, affected my mood poorly. Not sure how to feel better about it. Probably too hopeful that we'll get to hang out again. Is he one of them? Doesn't matter. Would he want to hear what happened at the psych ward and psychiatric nurse's office? June 19th, 2016. Twitch episode ideas. Getting started. Setting up Patreon, Twitch, and making a banner. Banner. Realistic cat in a hoodie. Second episode. The script. Fleshing out the main ideas of the episode. Once the overall themes are sorted, creating a script between characters. Deciding on your first animation. Explaining what my first one is going to be about. How it's going to be a small animation to practice the workflow towards myself so I can go back to it later on and see how well the technique has done. Episode 3. Voice acting. Animation. According to the Animation Survival Guide, it's about timing and length. So we determine the length of the animation by its collected soundtrack. So once the script is written, and it is here, I go into the app and record my sound bites. Once they're done, we can start the next episode. Episode 4. Character design. This will be the most complicated one up until this point. I'm used to working in Sharpie or photorealistically with an airbrush. This is going to have a learning curve, so bear with me. Episode 5. Character emotion. Mention Jay's emotion sheet is a rough guide. Try it out. Episode 5.5. Animation basics. The bouncing ball. Everyone has to do it as an exercise, so I might as well do it with them too. Bouncy ball, squashy ball, heavy ball, ping pong ball. Episode 6. Animating the emotions for practice. Animation is broken up into cycles of movement. The timing is either linear or lopsided, like it's balloons in the middle or at the end. So learning to manage the movements will produce different results. Animate the same movements on different times to show the difference. So what I've read is that timing is best if broken up into sets of 9 frames for ease of animation, but other frame cycle types let you slower increase the speed and fluidity of the movement and have to be considered. The end goal is to make as smooth an animation as possible. Animation, as far as I know, is changing states over time from one extreme to the other. So now that's done, let's color it in. This is the first character sheet I've ever made. Once that's done and it's uploaded, body shots, walk cycles, run cycles, stop quickly, crawling, jumping. The goal of this exercise is to see what you can get the character to do so you have an idea of how to do it later. I figure before jumping into the process, it's better to break them into smaller pieces, starting small and then working on the larger process as a whole once the basics are down. The survival guide mentions that you need to work from points of contact, fence posts he called them, and then working the in-between. Okay, well I'm taking a break, so I might as well do some ads. This is my first one, so bear with me. So, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's pretty cool. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And all you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Please visit anchor.fm/divergentmind to leave a message so that I may get back to you. Thank you. Have a nice day. So Anchor is asking me to ask you to support me financially. I would ask that you go to my Patreon to do that, which is patreon.com/divergentmind. It means you can either become a monthly subscriber at a different tier of $1 to $3 to $5. I'm not looking for a lot. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not asking for anything. This is going to go to the end of my podcast. I don't like it when podcasts straight up ask you for money when I'm doing okay. Well, I'm not doing okay. I'm surviving now to the point that I can make this. I would love to be able to make improvements to this by, say, getting... So basically, I'm running off an iPad, and I would like to improve it by getting different things that would make it better. Maybe some headphones that monitor output or a better mic, though the mic I got was from J-Wife, so I might not even use the better mic. You know what I mean? It's all about whatever I need at the time, but really it's just to get healthy again, because I'm currently over 300 pounds and I don't want to die that young. I would really like to be able to afford some vegetables so I can go back to my vegetarian diet, because being this big sucks. And I'm happy to sit in a chair all day, but I really got to walk my butt off, literally. So that's what the money would be for. It would be for healthy food, because I can't afford it. I can afford ramen and pasta and rice and beans, but I can't live on carbs, because that's how you get this big on antipsychotics. Junk food and carbs, which is just cheap and plentiful around me. So I would like to leave my house and just lose some weight. And to do that, I would like to go to the store and buy some vegetables, please. But you don't have to do anything. I'm not asking you to. I'm not begging. I'll figure it out on my own. Much pleasure, Jay.
Hey people, take a listen to the Divergent Mind podcast. You get both insight into living with a serious mental illness and get to listen to a lovely tale about a journey cute little animals need to take. Don't miss out, and remember, divergent minds don't need to think alike.
Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that I have a YouTube channel called Taught Myself, and that I've decided to start selling merch already with a phrase that my brother showed me saying, "My disability is invisible," of which I made a hat for myself. So I decided to make hats, shirts, hoodies, for both men and women on Spreadshirt.com. All you have to do is search for "My disability is invisible." It's in green, and that's mine. You'll know it's me because when you click the sale icon, the same little Divergent Mind icon comes up. And I hope you'll support me. I make about $5 per shirt or per sale. Everything else goes to Spreadshirt. But that's okay, because it's still a better deal than a lot of other places. And I really hope you'll support me. Come check me out on the YouTube. Teach me how to do that properly so I can have a community there too. And I await your response. Have a lovely day. Jay.